Okay, so hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about food connections and sustainability and what it means for us to be connected to our food and what implications that has for our food system and the sustainability of our food system. So it's good timing actually, because if you're caught up with your readings in Nourish Planet, the chapter was describing in a way our relationship with food. It was talking about how food and nutrition and choices in diet can impact our health. And this kind of goes along the same lines with our connection to food. Uh, there's many different reasons why we choose the food that we eat, and a lot of it comes down to multiple different factors, and a lot of times food is a social thing, right? um, when you consider food, there's often different cues that would encourage you to eat a certain way. And when we're looking at the psychology and the social sciences side of things, there are often it's called soft cultural factors, where your tendencies towards the foods you pick are based on the norms within your group or the set of people that you associate yourself with, the meanings of those foods, and also some assumptions. So take, for example, the pictures that I'm showing here. The top picture, of course, when you first see that, you're probably thinking Thanksgiving, right? Um, that's definitely a norm. When I first moved here, there was no Thanksgiving from when where I'm from. So coming to the United States and having a cultural identity of foodstuffs during a particular time of the year. I love Thanksgiving, but it was something very new to me, and now I'm embracing that as a norm. I would never suggest that for Thanksgiving dinner we have a barbecue and we have hot dogs and hamburgers, right? That just would never fly. So there's certain norms associated with different events, and that's definitely a cultural factor into choosing the kinds of things that you're going to eat. And then if you take a look at the lower picture, that is a image of a family breaking their fast during Ramadan. It's called iftar, and the choices of foods that they have in their meal, in their family gathering to break their fast, are very specific to their culture. And it's a very traditional way of breaking fast. So there's multiple different foods that you can see on that table. But that is definitely another assumption. It's a soft cultural factor that is playing into the food choices, right? And then when you consider the harder factors, these would be things like income. So income determines what you can buy. And I know we've talked a lot about, how the food system has altered towards more of a convenience, or at least it's under the banner of convenience, right? So depending on your income status, that'll depend on what you choose to eat. So if you're in a higher income bracket, you might be choosing things that are more expensive and then tend to be better for you. Things like organic and pasture raised and certified this and certified that and pesticide free and all of that. And even when it comes down to where you go out to eat, you're going to choose, if you're in a higher income bracket, you can choose to go to restaurants that are more fancy, right, with better cuts of meat and so on. Whereas obviously on the other side of things, if you're on the lower income scale, and we've talked about this, fast food restaurants will then play into it. You can feed your family very cheaply if you all go to McDonald's versus going to Ruth Chris Steakhouse, for example, right? So social class also plays into that. Status within your groups and geopolitics all play a role, and they're sort of the hard factors that are, you know, what's the word? Determining the way in which you're choosing your foods. There are also biological factors too. So appetite. Some people have a higher appetite than others. Some people have a lower appetite. There's hunger as well. So whether or not you feel hungry will determine the kinds of things you're going to eat. I know from personal experience, if I'm really hungry and really busy, then I'm going to choose something that's quick. And I won't sort of spend 45 minutes making a quiche Lorraine, for example, right? I'll choose something fast and eat that quickly and move along. Also, taste and palatability. So there are some things that people just, don't like. My son won't eat butternut squash. He doesn't like it, but I do. But so that's taste and palatability, what your body is able to eat. There's also psychological factors, right? So your mood, whether you want something that's pleasurable, so whether you're going for something that is easy and tasty, or if you're in the mood for jalapeno poppers that could be quite painful. But all of those things play into the food choices you make, even disgust and like. So there are many things in different cultures where it's not one of our cultural factors. If it's not a norm, then we choose to be disgusted by something like chicken feet, right? Lots of people eat chicken feet. I don't think I could do it, but that to me is kind of disgusting. And brain, I would never eat brain. Nope, I just couldn't do it. It disgusts me. But there's plenty of things I do like in replacement of that. So those play into my psychological factors of the foods that I choose. And also stress. Yes, stress has a big part to play in the choices of foods we make and even how much we eat. It's a real thing, stress eating. And I don't know about you guys, but lately, since this whole COVID thing, I have definitely noticed a shift in my stress eating ability. Trying to rein it in, and I'm eating much healthier so that I can stay healthy. That all has a huge role to play as well. So you can see that there is definitely an immense range of factors that dictate our relationship with food, and moving forward, how the food system has changed over time also plays a big role, right? And we've talked a little bit about that. So if this wasn't, if we weren't in the midst of the COVID-19 fiasco that we are in, I would probably have something different to say about the images that you're seeing here and our relationship with food. So everyone is depending pretty heavily on these technological advances right now. So I'm going to pretend that we are not in the midst of a pandemic that is not dependent on these kinds of outlets, and I'm going to pretend that we are in a normal lecture situation and describe to you how somewhere along the line in our modern world we are losing our connection with food, and it can be seen by so many of these companies like Instacart. If you're not familiar, which you probably are because everyone's using it at the moment, is a company that is very much like Uber, Uber drivers, that is. So you populate your grocery list and then people will go out and shop for you and bring it to your door, which is really handy right now. But what it's doing is it's now removing the shopper from the sheer experience of going to the supermarket and picking out the kinds of foods that you want to eat. It's becoming so disconnected from the actual process that you no longer have to participate in purchasing your own food. And things like Uber Eats. I'm sure you all have used Uber Eats. It's a delivery for food. Excuse me. And it's brought to your door. It's like a carryout, right? And that again is removing yourself from the dining experience. Even the whole process of going to a restaurant to sit down and eat with your friends and your family is now being changed to be in your home and removed from social groups and eating alone. So, that in itself has consequences for our relationship with food. It used to be an absolute taboo to eat alone. No one would eat alone. It was deemed socially unacceptable in my parents' time. That wasn't something you did. And God forbid you would eat a sandwich while walking down the street. That never happened. You would sit and you would eat with other people. That's just the way it was. And that's how I grew up too. I grew up in very much, here are your meals, everyone eats together, we finish, everyone helps clean up, etc. So that is having an impact on our relationship with food. Things like Peapod is another example of where groceries are delivered straight from Giant, right, or Safeway, those kinds of delivery services. So these are just some examples of how, on the one hand, I'm grateful now that we have all of these advances and we have the ability to get food brought straight to our house, and we don't have to risk going out into the public given the circumstances with COVID-19. But I can see for sure how leading up to, how now our relationship with food has changed so much, and it's a result of some of these things. So removing ourselves from the process has huge implications for what we even imagine the food system to look like. So there was an article, and the link is here for you guys to read. Sorry about that. It's a Newsweek article. It's very short, but the title of this article is Origin of Food. Children say cheese comes from plants, pasta from animals. And this was a study that was done in Britain, so it's not picking on US children, which I do later on. But we're just seeing that this is a Western world kind of problem. Developed countries such as the European Union and the United States, children are completely disconnected from their food source. They don't understand where things are coming from. They wouldn't know how to make many of these things. And so in many ways, we're losing so much knowledge, so much traditional knowledge, from the beginning. We're raising our children to exist and to eat and be part of the food system in this industrialized way of operating, right? So industrial agriculture has a lot to answer for when it comes to this. Children just don't have the opportunity. I've taught this class just now. This will be just my second year of teaching it. And sometimes there have been, in the first year that I taught it, there was a single student, one student, who had never been to a farm, right? Who had never had a look to see what was on a farm. And I'm sure that would be the case today. If I were to survey all of the students at Hood and ask them whether or not they had been to a farm, have they ever bought food from a farm directly, I'm sure that the majority of people will say no. I know in this class it's a little bit different because I think a few of you or many of you come from farming backgrounds, which is great. So you're much more connected to your food. And this might be really surprising to you if I'm telling you a lot of people don't have a clue where the food comes from or how it's made. That might be kind of surprising. But the more you start to research this topic, the more you'll be astounded at the lack of knowledge, and especially traditional knowledge of how to prepare recipes, how to cook, how to pick vegetables. And that's not even talking about how to grow your own vegetables. I mean, a lot of people can't grow their own food, and we've become very dependent on the industrialized machine for our food system, right? So I want you to read this article just to get some perspective on at least what's happening in the UK when it comes to children and how they're so disconnected. Like why is this happening? And it's probably happening for the same reasons that it's happening in this country too. So this is a YouTube clip that I would like you to pause this recording and take a look at. It's the Jamie Oliver clip, and he visits a classroom to try to figure out where children stand in terms of their knowledge when it comes to fresh fruits and vegetables. So take a look at that. It's only about a minute long, and then come back here and we'll go on to the next one. Okay, so the last video you guys watched was on the Jamie Oliver clip, and I don't know about you, but I was extremely surprised to see that a lot of kids, I mean, almost the entire classroom of first graders or kindergartners, I think they were first graders though, had no clue what the fresh produce was. They couldn't identify it. And so that to me is screaming that there is a huge disconnect. If our children can't identify these things now, then we are really failing as a society, in my opinion. So I don't know, it was a little bit surprising when I saw that the first time. Now this video clip I want you to have a look at as well, and this is Jamie Oliver's attempt again at try to show children where their food comes from. And he basically takes chicken nugget as the recipe and shows them how it's made, and then queries them whether or not they would eat it. So go ahead and take a look, and then hop back over to the presentation, and then we'll continue. Okay, so not only are we losing our connection with real food, and we've talked about this a little bit too, we're also confusing our sort of way of thinking about food when we have companies like Impossible Foods that are creating meat substitutes that when they sizzle in the pan, they taste like meat, and they even bleed when you cut them, but it's not meat, it's vegetable based. And I get the argument, absolutely. It takes up 96% less land, 87% less water, and 89% fewer emissions. I'm all on board for the environmental side of things. But the question is, from a societal standpoint, from a psychological and a socioeconomic standpoint, does this then mean that we're encouraging people to even be further confused by where the food comes from? So it tastes like meat, it smells like meat, but it's a plant, right? That is where I feel like we're screwing with our minds, and it makes it just even more confusing. So while I appreciate and think there's value in finding an innovative way for a meat substitute, I'm just not convinced it's what we should be doing. And it comes down to that saying again, just because we can doesn't mean we should. And I feel that way about a lot of things that we're doing in terms of technology. So, it begs the question, is it really good for us to be finding these substitutes from a social point, from a cultural perspective, from a psychological perspective? It's no wonder, with all of the things that we've discussed about so far, it's no wonder that in the United States, there are more eating disorders than anywhere else in the world. And I wonder, is it because of this relationship with food? Is it the strangeness of the disconnect and not eating together? And it's I'm not a sociologist, so I'm not really qualified to give an opinion on that, but it's just something that's worth thinking about, right, from a social side of things. And so not only is our food different in terms of what we're putting on our plates, but it's also now different in the way it's prepared. So take 3D printing foods, for example. So this is an example of chocolate manufacturing. Cool, but it's just strange when you think about how chocolate is made. And I've made chocolate myself before. It's time consuming. It's a fun event. It involves people. Everyone can work together to make the molds and to make the truffles and whatnot. And it's a different experience compared to letting a machine do it for you. And so much of our food is made from machines. So how we prepare the food has changed. How we, the processing of food and all of that, which we've talked about. So I'm not going to harp on about that anymore. But all of these things play into how our human society has changed and how our relationship with food is so different now to, even in the 60s, right? Well, the 50s and 60s. So here's another video clip for you, which is kind of an extreme example of how technology is further removing ourselves from the food system. This is a startup company, and it is artificial intelligence and robotics together that are basically creating a kitchen space for you. So it's the size of a kitchen cabinet. It's all enclosed in glass and it's computerized. There's a refrigerated component on the inside of the on the left hand side. So over here is the refrigerator, and the robotic arms, they will learn different recipes and they will cook a meal for you. So while the technology is awesome, and I can see some application for it, certainly for people who are disabled, for example, or unable to cook for themselves, but it's not being targeted for that. It's being targeted to the people with the high income brackets, busy lives, nannies for the children, and now let's insert this robot into the kitchen. So this idea, for me, when I think about that, I think about what are the social components of that? What does that mean for access to food? And what does it mean for equity as well? So this product could replace somebody who was on the lower income scale that had a job in someone's home, right? So there's multiple things that pop into my head when I see something like this. So I want you guys to take a little moment, pause, and watch the advertisement for this robotic chef that you can have installed in your kitchen. So take a look at that and then come back, and I will go through a couple of questions. You can use the remainder of our class time to answer the questions. So when you come back, go to the next slide. Okay, so what I would like to do is for you guys to, oops, Daisy. Oh dear. Okay. I would like you to spend the rest of what would be our class time. So this presentation to you took up 25 minutes or so. And what I'd like you to do is watch the videos, read the news article, and think about these questions. And you can also weave in now, now that we're coming towards the end of this semester, I'm really hopeful that the books that you've been reading that I've chosen for this class are helping to shape and inform your thinking patterns when it comes to a food system in general. So I'm really hopeful that now it's going to spur some really meaningful discussion, because it's an exciting topic and it's something I'm really passionate about. So I love hearing from and listening to all of you guys, or I'll be reading about all of your thoughts, because there are some great thinkers out there, right? And maybe there's one or two of you in this class that are going to be the great thinkers in the future, and ways that we can make our food system sustainable, right? So the two questions that I really want you to ponder is, firstly, what links do you see between our current disconnect with food, so the food system, and the lack of sustainability in our current food system? So what links do you see that has caused our disconnect with food, and are there any reasons why our disconnect with food is also stopping us from having a sustainable food system. And so when I was thinking about this question, all kinds of things were coming to my mind, and I was thinking about it from all different angles. So think about how our agricultural system has changed, right? The processing of food, the transportation of food. How has our food system led to us being so disconnected? That's what I want you guys to ponder on. And then we'll take this to the discussion board. And then the second question I'd like you to think about, given that we have this current crisis of COVID-19, and there is certainly a lack of available food to people, how has this changed your relationship with food? Is there anything that your family is doing differently? Like, are you seeing that your family is dusting off those recipe books, and are you guys cooking together and eating together? So yeah, I just want to know what your journey's been like as we've been moving through this pandemic. How has the COVID-19 influenced your food choices? How has it changed your food choices maybe? I'd love to hear how it's working for you guys. And I'll share with you mine, at least for this second question. We've definitely noticed that we don't take anything for granted anymore. We're wasting a lot less food. We are cooking as healthily as possible. But when we get those fresh vegetables in, they are like gold, right? They don't wilt. They hardly have time to go bad. And I'm finding that, yes, this is difficult to get all of my stuff organized and record lectures and all of that, but I'm saving time being home, and that time is allowing me to cook more for my family. So, and it's more enjoyable. We're trying new things, and so yeah, I feel as though for me, I'm now more connected with my food than I was before because of this crisis. I've expanded my own vegetable garden at home, and the whole family's excited about it now. You know, there's more encouragement. We're all excited to see the sprouts coming up and things like that. So in a way, I feel like for my family, this crisis has allowed us to come together and really be more thankful and mindful of what we're eating. So that's my perspective. I'd love to hear yours. Is it similar? Is it different? Are you, I'd love to hear how you guys are getting on. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is go ahead and post this video. It was short and sweet, but I'd really like you to spend the 45 minutes remaining that we would have in class reading and thinking and putting down your thoughts for the discussion board. Okay, I will see you guys. I'll see you on the chat on the Blackboard session tomorrow. Okay.